It is finally here. On to Richmond 2. The Union Strikes South from MMP finally showed up. I have been waiting for this for quite some time. Since they first announced it, I think I pre-ordered it on the first day that they put it up. This is Great Campaigns of the American Civil War. It is my favorite hex encounter system, even though I'm not really a Civil War person. Like, I'm not interested too much in the history. I think the gameplay of this series is absolutely phenomenal. This is a big boy. This box, 3-inch box. I think it's the first game in the series to have that. It is a just ridiculous amount of content in here, and we'll go through and I'll show it to you. There was some, not controversy, but the maps that came from the factory were not trimmed, so they all had the borders on it, so they didn't line up properly. MMP fixed that, and I went through this box just to see if my maps, because they held my shipment. They gave me a shipping notification. The next day I saw the announcement that the maps weren't cut. And so mine actually didn't end up shipping out for over a week. And so I went through here to look at the maps to make sure they were cut. And it does appear that they are cut in mine. I know some people online have said that the cut maps showed up in a separate mailing. That may be for people who got the box before they realized there was a problem, and MMP had to ship them replacements. But I do believe the maps in here are cut properly so that they align. And GCACW, the maps are incredible. Just love the color palette and the detail and the historical information that's present on them without ever obscuring gameplay, which is great. So on to Richmond 2, Union Strikes South. This is actually 3 separate games in this box. That's why it's so pricey. Comes with On to Richmond 2, which is the second edition of the 1862 Richmond campaign. Grant Takes Command 2, which is the 1864 Overland campaign. And then it's got the Petersburg campaign, which covers 1864, 1865 around Petersburg, with Grant crossing the James River. So just like, if you only bought one game in 2023, if you bought this one, you'd be playing it probably for a decade. There's that much content in here. It's even bigger than Roads to Gettysburg 2. So I just wanted to quickly go through here to show you when you purchase a game in this series, just how absolutely fully featured the box is. I mean, it's crazy how much content they packed into here. So we get the 2 MMP dice that we always get. We get the little packing sheet. And then the very first thing on top is the On to Richmond Peninsular Campaign 1862 booklet. Now, one of the differences here with the booklets in this game is that they are not perfect bound like they have been in the past, so they don't have a square spine. They're staple bound, which some people prefer. The art on the cover, very evocative, looks like it's from a painting of the Chickahominy River. Looks like troops crossing that river. I don't know too much about Civil War history, so I'm not going to be useful in that regard for telling you what some of this stuff is involved. But I can tell you that I've been, I did do a playthrough of All Green Alike, the campaign scenario from Stonewall Jackson's Way 2. That was my first exposure to Great Campaigns of the American Civil War. I did that on the channel. I did several other videos on that game as well in the system, and I absolutely loved it. And what I wanted to do after playing All Green Alike was play through GCACW chronologically with everything that's been released from 1861 to 1865. And the reason I haven't done more on the channel with the system, even though I've really wanted to, is because I was waiting for this particular box, because it fills in some of the gaps between the existing games. First and foremost, which is On to Richmond, the Peninsular Campaign of April through July of 1862, when the Union Army made a run on Virginia against the Confederates to try and end the war early. So this is the next chronological game that I would need to play if I was going to do the Civil War chronologically in GCACW, and so I do plan to get around to that. But you've got essentially the basic rules for On to Richmond. There's usually not too many of these. Yeah, it's only about a page. And then you get into the scenarios. And each of the games in GCACW has an incredible number of scenarios, so much content. Sometimes hypothetical, sometimes historical. I believe this here's, it tells you what dates. So a lot of these smaller scenarios, you're not using any special rules, and they're just, a couple of turns. You can play them in probably an evening, maybe even shorter. And they usually go in chronological order. The Gates of Richmond. You can see here the setup's getting a little bit larger as the armies start to gather. Seven Pines. I know this is one it's a 2-turn scenario that people were excited for. And then here is Stuart's Ride. So it uses both maps. Here's the setups. Here is the 7 days. This is another one I know people are really excited for. It's a 7-turn scenario. Looks like a lot of special rules for this one. I know the 7 days is a pretty unique period in terms of the March on Richmond. I don't know how, but this one, a lot more special rules here. Usually done by victory points. And I won't go through every single book at this detail, but here's Gaines Mill. I just wanted to show you how much content. I mean, you're already up to 8 scenarios, retreat to the James, and these can all go differently because the way the game mechanics are structured is there's a lot of variability in every single activation. So what happens in one particular instance of the scenario you play may not happen in the next one. A commander might steal a march here, or they may remain stationary when you didn't expect them to. That could change everything. So here's the On to Richmond advanced game rules. So you only use these rules if you're going to play one of the campaign scenarios, and there's one campaign scenario in On to Richmond. Here's some rules about how the action cycle ends differently. There's a lot of special rules if you're going to play the campaign. This is really the heart of the game. I think GCACW, the scenarios are really fun for like a short, kind of compact gaming experience, but the campaign scenarios really add a lot to the flow, and you really see how a campaign over time could fall apart or gain steam. Still more special rules for the campaign. Clearly, there's a lot going on here. I know Union gunboats is a big one here. Continue. I mean, I think there's 20 sections to this. So, this is not a light undertaking if you're going to play the campaign. But the reason I say that is because the actual campaign scenario in On to Richmond is long. So we're still going with special rules here. Campaign-related rules. And here's the end of the game. There's a variable end of the game. But here's the campaign scenario. The Peninsula campaign uses both maps from On to Richmond. It is 112 turns, April 5th to July 25th. The game may end earlier, but that doesn't kick in until turn 91. So realistically, if you start playing this campaign, you are in it for the long haul. This is one you leave set up for a year, if not more, if you're playing solo, to try and get through it. I'm very interested in doing that. I don't know how far I'll go. I would obviously start that with the intention of going as far as I can, but if I get bored or it's not very fun anymore, I probably wouldn't. But you can see the amount of units that are going to be here. But this system really, really is great for seeing the maneuver aspect of Civil War campaigns and how that stuff kind of developed over time, some of the unique challenges from getting to point A to point B. And then obviously you've got historical notes in here. So this is the first of 3 books of this magnitude in this game. This is a single game on its own. I mean, the campaign scenario in this game is a game on its own. We do have some counters. We have, I think, 5 counter sheets in this game. Here are the units. They went back to the old style of the units themselves. And then here's some of the leaders. Union and Confederate. There's typically not a lot of unit counters in the game because we are talking about sort of a campaign division level, brigade level, sometimes corps level simulation here. Here's the terrain effects and terrain effects chart. Here's one of the maps. I'm not going to open them. I'll just kind of give you an idea. Here's the On to Richmond South map. The one thing I do like about this game is that they've put turn tracks in a lot of the charts especially with the advanced rules on the map, which is kind of a first for the system. So you can see here all the stuff that you need to play while you're using this map as I fumble with it. So there's 4 maps in here. That's the first map. That's the On to Richmond South map. We got more counter sheets here, more units, Confederates, Union. Here are the tables. This is version 1.5 of GCACW. I don't know what the exact tweaks are. I don't think they're very substantial. When I played Stonewall Jackson's Way, I was using 1.3, and then I know Hood Strikes North uses 1.4. So if there are some tweaks, they're probably very subtle. But here's the combat table. It's a die differential table. Typically, I don't like die differential combat systems, but this one I think works really well. Modifiers, artillery, combat results summary, and so forth, force ratio modifiers. Retreats. So retreat in this game is fairly sophisticated. This chart is very helpful in figuring out how you retreat. Typically, you can only really move and retreat along roads in GCACW, so the road network becomes very, very important to manage. Cavalry, flank attacks, how you can flank enemy units to get bonuses. And then here is specific charts and tables for Grant Takes Command, which we haven't gotten to yet, but you can see that there's game end tables and random events and strategic events. And then here's the movement summary. So the other defining feature here is that Confederate and Union units and different types of units move differently depending on which year they're in and which faction they belong to sort of reflect the asymmetries of the armies, which is really cool. Command radius reminder and some stuff. So these are not going to be super different than what you've seen in other GCACW games. Here is the standard game rules version 1.5. It's actually not a terribly complicated system. It's actually very playable, which is one of the reasons I like it. However, the rules are super wordy and they use really tiny font. I really think they endeavor to be really comprehensive so that you don't have any questions. A lot of the basic rules are not used almost in like a lot of scenarios. Construction of field works, for example, you really are only going to use in specific games that take place in specific years. But the game is very playable. It's very, once you start moving counters around and kind of get it, it's really easy to understand. But reading the rules first and then trying to play the game is not the best way to do it because of how wordy the rules are. It's one area where I'd like to see the system cleaned up. Here's another map. So this is going to be the On to Richmond North map. And you can see more tracks for gunboats here, railroad movement, amphibious movement. So a lot of tables on this as well. The maps love the detail, all the little tiny points of interest, the names of various features, the roads, and so forth. They've got the county names, Hanover County there. There's Richmond, Virginia. So this one and this one connect long edge to long edge, top to bottom together. And so when you play On to Richmond, the campaign, you'd use both of these. Some scenarios will use only one of these. Here are the strength point markers for the Union. This is a strength point based system. Some readouts, some generic artillery, another of the combat or charts and tables booklet. Here's the Petersburg Campaign. This is what's new in this box. This has not been released before. And this is sort of late Civil War, 64 to 65. Not a lot of basic game rules about this particular module that comes in this box, and a ton of scenarios. You'd expect the Union to be sort of ascendant in some of these, given that we're going into 1865. Sheridan crosses the James. Sheridan or Sherman? Did I get that right? Sheridan. Okay. The crater. And so, yeah, so as you can see, the amount of content in here is absolutely staggering. 7, 8, 9 scenarios so far. 10 scenarios here. Retreat to Appomattox. We all know what happened there. Now here's the Petersburg Campaign. This campaign, let's see how many campaign scenarios we have. So here's all the campaign-specific rules. Looks like there's a lot here as well. Building redoubts. Substitute units, that's usually in every campaign. Confederate division leaders, Confederate forts. So yeah, there's a lot going on here. Special Union bridge casualties. Union amphibious movement, gunboats again. Yeah, there's a lot of special rules here that I'm seeing. Victory. All right, here's scenario 11, the Petersburg Campaign. Encompasses the entire Petersburg Campaign, starts mid-June 1864 after Cold Harbor, and continues to summer and fall, and then winter and spring 1865. 296 turns, so more than double what we just saw in On to Richmond. That is absolute insanity. That would take you a long time to play. And, you know, with all the special rules, I'm sure it would be extremely fascinating as well. One day when I'm retired, I might give it a shot. So yeah, some designer's notes on there. So you get another booklet for Petersburg. Here is the On to Richmond to Union Force display, tracks for keeping track of your VP and manpower losses. And when you have forces combining together, some holding boxes, there's a Confederate one of those in here as well. Confederate strength points and markers. Some other markers down there as well. Here's Grant Takes Command. This is the Overland Campaign, made in June 1864. And what's nice about that is it butts up nicely to Petersburg, so you could conceivably play them back to back over the course of your life. We'll go through this one very quickly. Battle of the Wilderness is in this one. Grant crosses the Rapidan. Race for Spotsylvania. Bloody Spotsylvania. Sheridan rides south. Strike them a blow. Bethesda Church. Trevelyan Station. So pretty decent number of scenarios, and then we've got the advanced game rules here. Let's see how they compare to the rest. We've got quite a bit. It looks like a lot of the same advanced rules, given I'm seeing some of the same diagrams. Shenandoah Valley special rules. Supply. Typically that's the same across most games. Here's a lot on a specific section. Activation special rules, Confederate forts again, end of game at 22. So this has the least amount of campaign-specific rules, but Let's see how long the campaign scenario is. The Overland Campaign, all 40 days. So it's only 40 turns. And it actually only uses portions of the map, which is kind of interesting. Doesn't even use both maps. So 40 turns, that's way more manageable. You could probably get that done, you know, in a couple months, maybe if you played very frequently, weeks. But a lot of units, a lot of formations. And then we've got marching to Cold Harbor. This is a 17-turn campaign scenario, and this is, I think, a little bit of an abbreviated version of the previous campaign. So if you only want to play sort of the end of this particular campaign. And then here's the Grand Campaign. So this is some additions to Grant Takes Command to enable to play the 2 Grand Campaign scenarios that link Grant Takes Command with Stonewall in the Valley and both onto Richmond maps. So that would be a massive, fun, huge monster undertaking. A lot of extra rules there. But all in all, this box... Oh, here's some more scenarios. Look at this. Let's see, what do we got? We've got If It Takes All Summer. It's a 17-turn campaign scenario. And yeah. So it's just staggering how much stuff comes in here. Here's the Grant Takes Command North map. You can see no charts and tables on this one. But I did check, and these do line up with the other maps. Last counter sheet, we've got the fatigue markers, which is very important in this game. Not very many of them, interestingly. Curious if you're going to need to dig out some extras from another game in the series. And then just general fortification markers, breastworks, out-of-supply markers, that kind of thing. In here, we've got sort of the map layout for if you joined all of the maps, or if you joined the Grant Takes Command maps, and then this is a theater display, so other things that are happening outside the scope of the game's 2 maps and through the rest of the war happening here. I believe Atlanta Is Ours had a very similar sheet where you've got other things going on around what's happening, and this kind of tracks that stuff. So it even zooms out another layer here. And here's the Petersburg Campaign turn track. If you think you're going to finish that anytime soon, think again. More tables and so forth. So it's nice that they put that in here. The final map in the box, you see Dinwiddie County. This is going to be looks like probably the north or south map for Grant Takes Command, it looks like. So you can see, nice green color. Very emblematic of the U.S. Yeah, this is the south map for Grant Takes Command. And then finally, the Confederate force pool display. So that's everything you get in this sort of long-winded unboxing of Under Richmond 2. I am so stoked to own this. I love this series. I really want to play it more. And now I'm going to, with all of the content that comes in here, I am going to get at least the Under Richmond portion of the game clipped and sorted. And then we might just try and tackle an open-ended series on the 112-turn campaign and just see how far we go before I lose interest or it goes south. But yeah, thanks for watching.